Unfiltered. Like you're in another world, like you zoned out.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Unfiltered. I'm your host, Georgii Speakman, and today's guest is the wild, wonderful, and very creative Catalina Lotero, a designer and creative consultant with BCG, who has a soft spot for speculative design, branding, and very, very dope aesthetics, which I happen to love, respect, and admire. Love a creative with an incredible eye, and that's who we're going to be speaking with today. Catalina has spoken at TED, which is incredible, and we're going to hear a little bit more about that, but also been named one of Colombia's 40 under 40 and has led projects across 12 different countries and over 10 industries. So welcome to the show today, Catalina. How are you feeling on this lovely Monday morning?
Starting the week.
I swear. Yeah, it's always a bit of an adjustment on a Monday, I think. I find it to be the most challenging day out of the week, personally.
Especially after a long weekend.
Yes, totally.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, delighted to have you on the show. Finally, we've had a bit of back and forth trying to pin you down because you're a busy lady with two gorgeous twin daughters. And a very busy design career, but you've got such an incredible eye. Tell us about your journey into the realms of creativity. Where did it really start for you? What were the things that really, I guess, dragged you and launched you into all of these different places and spaces of creativity?
I think maybe in a very cliche way, I did like art class and everything related to that in school.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to double major at some point in political science and environmental sciences, and I did in the University of Toronto. I got midway, and then I realized I was slobbing over my roommate's homework, and he was studying at the University of Ontario Design. And I started getting very jealous of all the work he had to do until I couldn't take it anymore. So I decided to switch careers.
I love that.
And I think it was a great decision supported by my parents. So it was a good moment to realize that wasn't what I was made for, and that I really, really enjoyed design.
I love that. And it's good that you were able to recognize at the right time as opposed to realizing it 10 or 20 years into your career and having to worry about it then. But I'm just curious because when creatives come into the world as children, typically they sort of pop out singing, dancing, acting, theatrics, painting, whatever. Did you have, as a child, was it quite obvious that you had a specific creative bone and focus or passion or love as a kid?
I think it's very corp. The love that I had. The first logo I learned how to draw by memory was probably the Rolling Stones, and then
Nice.
Johnny Walker, and I was like 10 or 11. And my mom used to get me into competitions of like random companies where I could like pitch logos to them when I was like 12. So
That's amazing.
a very random
Yeah.
interest that I had combined with my mom. I feel like her dream was always to be like part of, she's an engineer. She was an engineer for Exxon for a long time, but her secret passion was to be a creative at Pixar. So I think I definitely got a lot from that through my mother.
Amazing. And you've now got, you're a young mum. You've got the two young twin daughters. Are you seeing one or the other or both of them being naturally drawn to other creative activities, elements, and interests at all?
I'm assuming all kids at 3-year-old, want to like get their fingers dirty and like paint, and like we do push it maybe a little bit more than other families. I'm not sure. I'm not that into like other families to know to compare. But we do go with them to like Goodwill and choose like random clothing that they like, so they can like mix different styles, different backgrounds, different times. Like we go vintage shopping with them.
That's so cute. That's so fun.
We'll try to make like our own cutlery with them, their own plates, their own like, so every time they create something is kind of something that they'll wear or that they'll use, which ends up being a lot more design than art, I guess, which is what I do. So it's like, what can we create out of our minds that we end up using for something?
I absolutely love that. I want to say that that's probably taking it a little bit further than the average family, which is awesome because it's encouraging them to really think for themselves and develop their own little eye style taste. I love that. And that's so effing cute too. But you've got your partner on one side who's more heavily into AI, and then you that's incredibly robust, has an incredible career in design and working with incredible agency and all that. You mentioned that you have started applying some practical tools, AI tools, to some of the design and work that you do. What platforms do you typically engage with in the realms of AI? What are they, and how like in what capacity? How are they in helping to advance your creative eye or ability to execute or be more efficient or any of those types of angles?
So I am married to an AI lead at a tech company. So I do get force fed information every day. So
Yeah,
I feel like thanks to him, I do get a lot of like edge on edge technology of like things that I can apply in my daily work. And he's usually very mindful of like picking up all the things that will help me and passing them over. But honestly, I don't think I have a lot of different things to what most people are probably using, but I have been using them now for a long time. When the twins were born, like 3 weeks after they were born, my husband got me for my birthday early access to DALI,
nice.
um, like a couple of months before it was launched. And I remember I wasn't able to, like, you're not able to sleep when you give birth anyway. So I was just like up creating images like crazy. And that was like maybe 3 years ago.
Mhm.
And I'm still using probably tools very similar to that year. Midjourney, Firefly, a lot of ChatGPT. I consult all the prompts that I do in Midjourney with ChatGPT constantly. So I'm constantly showing ChatGPT, like, I got this. I want to create something that is a bit more like, and I'll give it the reference. Please help me create the prompt. So I'll have
Nice.
ChatGPT chatting with Midjourney over and over to try to get somewhere that I know exactly what I want. Um, so that has been very helpful.
No, that's a really smart way to go about it. I personally prefer Midjourney. I've used Midjourney. I love Midjourney. I find that the aesthetics that come from Midjourney are probably stronger, at least for me. I feel like Dali has a certain aesthetic that doesn't isn't the right fit necessarily for a lot of other things. What are your thoughts on the different types of images, even with related or similar prompts between the two? I'm just curious.
ChatGPT is very obedient, and I like that. I like that I can describe exactly what I want. It's not going to look great, so it depends. Like if you want to show exactly like to a client that your elephant is going to be on top of a ball for that presentation, ChatGPT will do that. It won't do it pretty, but it will do it. Midjourney will take a lot more creative freedom sometimes. So it's interesting to know, like, do you want it to look exactly like what you're envisioning and you have to communicate something very clearly? Or do you want something that is more like evoking and aesthetic and it has like a certain style? Crea for me is one that is like exploding, like the amount of personalization and like things that you can move around are very fun. And then for me, it's very necessary to have the final layer of Photoshop at the end with Firefly. Firefly sucks if you do it from scratch. But if you have it to just like, it understands context really well. So you can be editing an image with that you created in Midjourney or ChatGPT and just tell it to like, instead of a ball, create a plant. And it understands context. So it will copy the style exactly as is.
Wow, okay. I haven't used Firefly or you said Crea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But obviously massive advocate for ChatGPT, use a lot of that. Are there any other additional plugins that you like to use for a lot of the work that you do through chat?
No, Not really. We have the BCG Enterprise version of
Hmm.
ChatGPT, and we're very blocked to like outside stuff. So we have a lot of like internal tools, but we cannot access, for example, like GPTs that are out in the world. So I feel that's why I have an experiment like with GPTs or like whatever they're called now. I see CVMs. I don't remember.
I'm very curious to understand, like, working within this sort of agency type environment, are they super encouraging of the AI tool utilization? Do they encourage you to even make suggestions on new platforms you like? Or are there sort of still some degree of barriers or limitations? And also on the client side, are you finding that some clients are leaning more into wanting to understand how they can utilize or how you might be engaging with AI as part of the creative process on their behalf? What are some of the conversations that are arising in that environment on either side?
At least in our department, it's been like I I get a lot of creative freedom, not only in the things that I do, but also in how I do them. And I value that a lot because I can come up with like, I want to use this tool that it was just released, and they'll be very open and find the legal way and find like they're super supportive. At the beginning, they were very supportive, and now they're on the other side. They're like pushy to be like, what are you finding? What are you doing? So that has been interesting. Like, we have always been exploring the latest.
Hmm.
And the advantage that we have is that we're not an agency. So an agency would, the client has copyright of everything you do for them. So everything, even if it's an image in a presentation, they will keep. So you would go into all those like
Hmm.
copywriting issues. We're a consultancy, so we can create a lot of like material that the client won't necessarily own or use. So we can go into that gray area of like, we will use a lot of these tools for to sell the idea or to show the idea to explain it, but they won't necessarily have to use it. Eventually we can create that image, recreate it with a professional photographer or something like that.
Totally understood. I'm very curious for somebody who's got such a beautiful creative eye like yourself, and you have the freedom to create as you wish, say on your personal IG and in other places and spaces, etc. As a creative, how do you balance between your own, injections of creativity, desires to sort of create and design in a certain way versus working in an environment where it's more instructional based on client wants and needs? Because I know that there are creatives that excel in those environments and others that really don't, or struggle with some elements on it. What's your take on that? How do you manage when you almost like want to bust free and just go bananas creating in a certain direction, but know that you have to stay within certain guidelines and parameters on behalf of the client or company? Talk to some of that process and how you sort of manage all of that.
I had my own creative studio for 10 years where I could do whatever I wanted. Then I went into academia and I was a design researcher for a while. And that world totally like rocked the way I did everything.
Hmm.
And it was hard, but it was also very interesting because I
Hmm.
realized I didn't know a lot of the things I didn't know. Um, and then I started understanding that there were other worlds that I had no idea existed that did things differently and that had a lot of value to add to the way I worked. And so when I started thinking about who are the best at branding, I started thinking about the US. And that's when I started thinking about moving here. I really,
Mm.
really wanted this. I really wanted to be under like people who are very professional, if you can say it that way. Like
Yeah.
they attention to detail is insane.
Hmm.
So I put myself through this basically. I wanted the restrictions, I wanted the limits to understand like how
Mm.
other
Love
people
that.
do it. It has been very different and it's hard. It's hard sometimes to remember that I have to go through 30 people sometimes to get an idea across to a client, which I
Hmm.
wasn't used to, but I am learning a lot. I don't know, it does get hard um, to the creative like exercise. Like my muscles don't feel sometimes like I'm working on the muscles that I would like to be working on.
Right.
So what I have done is I have doubled down on personal projects. So for example, the TED came from the personal project that BCG was very supportive of me doing. And I appreciate that a lot. So it's like, I will do my best work for you. And they allow me the time and the space to also create projects that I am very interested in, and that eventually, like, I understood that it paid off for them anyway.
Right.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean I love to hear that, because it's usually the other way, which is that most designers and creatives want to be sort of more free. But it's very cool that you've chosen to be like really intentional and to learn in that environment, because that's, I want to say, probably one of the smartest things you can do anyway, particularly if you want to have a scalable, career as such. But you've worked, speaking of America, and that's interesting because a lot of people would say some of the best design might come out of Japan or parts of Europe and things like that. So it's great to hear that you've aspired to a lot of great designers and creatives out of the States, I guess a much bigger level. You're originally from Colombia, obviously, but you've also lived in countries like Japan. How have you found the differences, the cultural differences in not only the design sort of scene, but the practical applications or expectations, processes around the way they think about design, act upon ideas, and all that kind of stuff? How would you describe the cultural differences between these three alternative markets, being Colombia, the States, and Japan?
So I think saying that the States, it has the base design, I guess I would rephrase that and say, like, they have the most profitable and most professional.
Yeah, okay, fair, yeah.
So basically, they're able to do things and sell them for prices that no other country can, and that's, I think, what I wanted to learn, right? The business
Right.
side of that.
Yeah.
I have met people now in my company that can sell the same project that I would have sold for 10x, 20x.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of what I wanted to learn. Like, what does it take to do that? Japan has like a big love for craft.
Mm-hmm.
They'll spend a lot of time doing it. It's not so much how much you will sell it for, but the quality of the work that you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So I would spend sometimes 6 months just doing a family of icons with a client. And you meet twice a week and you discuss, and then you go and think about it. And there are long silences during meetings where people are just like thinking. So the times are very, like, time passes very differently. Like, projects that I used to have like 8 months to do, sometimes here I have 3 weeks. But it's
Wow.
because the States is so intense. Like, it's this like overheating machine.
Yeah.
Granted, I had only 2 people there, and here I have 30. So
Yeah.
it's like they just know how to churn differently. And I
Yes.
wanted to learn that part.
Yeah.
And
Almost the
Colombia,
capitalistic side of the business,
yeah,
basically. Yeah.
which is also like good to know, right?
Mhm.
Like, we need to
Absolutely.
we need to survive and know how to
Yeah.
sell. And I feel like I'm learning a lot of that too.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
And then tell us about like time in Colombia. Like, how does their approach differ from both of these markets? Because I think there's just, similar to Mexico, there's just so much color. And anytime I visit a Mexican city, for example, obviously they're very different countries, but it's just part of that, like all the Latin sort of part of the world. There's so much color and creativity and beautiful art and architecture and history and things like that. How would you say that you've been influenced from your own culture and heritage and country from an
For me,
artistic and creative
still,
perspective?
after being in Japan, worked a lot with Europe, being in the States working now, I still love the way creativity works in Latin America. I
Mm-hmm.
still work with a lot of creatives in Latin America every single day.
Mm-hmm.
No matter where I am, whether it's in Japan or the States, I always get to an organization and I'm like, look, I have a team, and I like to outsource a lot of the things that I do because there are very hyper specialized people, that are exploring the boundaries of like whatever is it that they do. And creativity for me in Latin America has like that fun aspect to it that a lot of other countries don't. Like, they make it a job. And so it becomes mechanical. And then in Latin America, there's an element of innovation out of necessity. I think it comes. Like, we have
Mm-hmm.
to always be thinking about something different. If not, we'll just like die of hunger.
Wow.
So it's like it's a lot of scarcity that comes out in a lot of creativity. But I do feel like there's a lot of creativity to be like discovered in Latin America.
Yes,
Mm.
that's the feeling I get in at least to the places I've traveled to. That's really interesting. And so, would you say that America, because of its sort of capitalistic nature, by default, is more competitive in this world, or would you actually say that it's actually more competitive in other markets that you've had experience working in?
No, this is very competitive. This is like everyone is trying to figure out how to like make it faster, make it bigger, make
Mm,
it every single day, and the pressure is on. And now that AI is out there, I feel like everyone is very confused into and like scared sometimes into what's going to happen. What is my neighbor doing? Are they doing it even faster? Have they discovered one of the tools that I haven't? And that is making the pressure even bigger. So I feel like it's a it's a constant like pressure that you feel at work of
I
like
bet.
we have to be the biggest and the best, which
Yes.
I didn't feel before. In Colombia we lack that like passion to be number one. Like the states really, they know they will get there, so it's a confidence that I envy.
It is also a confidence I've had to learn too, because there's something in Australia called the tall poppy syndrome. And it's largely all about sort of playing small, you
Hmm.
know, criticizing yourself, putting yourself down as a form of humor. Um, yeah, it's that tall poppy syndrome where, you kind of have to, culturally are sort of, in many respects, backed into a corner to stay small. I've noticed I've had to grow a lot personally myself as well, just to adapt to the American culture of
Mm-hmm.
it's all about actually having confidence, being confident, putting yourself out there, having the confidence to constantly put yourself out there in whatever way, have a voice, speak up, like believe in yourself unequivocally, which is great because I think, at least in my experience, at times in Australia, that was very much like looked down upon as very classless, like
Mm.
tacky.
Yeah,
But it's
in
interesting,
Japan as well. Yeah.
yeah. But it's
Mm.
interesting that it's very much part of the American culture for sure. Um, so many other questions regarding tools. Like there's, in this rapid explosion of AI, outside of the tools that you've already mentioned on the AI front, are there other tools that you're finding to be incredibly useful and amazing in the work that you're doing? And also, how much time are you putting towards finding these tools? And how are you also making decisions around why would you be using this tool over ABCXYZ other tools, and all that kind of stuff? Because I just know that through this explosion of AI tech and the interception of creativity, there's just so much out there. Sometimes it's quite hard to sort of work out what's best or what's going to be right for you.
I just use it all. Basically, I do like everything I hear. I think that's the best way to like
Hmm.
judge, right? Like,
Hmm.
is this good? And if it's good, for what? Sometimes there'll be one that will pop up and be like, wow, we had never been able to do this. So there was like, I don't know, a couple of months ago, there was a Chinese one that was called Recraft, and they were getting to illustration that no one had been able to do, like to a level of detail. Like you could vectorize, you could do a lot of things. Um, and I wouldn't know that if I don't try it. So I do spend a lot of time using everything that comes out and being like, nope, nope, nope. And then if something is like kind of working, I'll surface it to like a couple of other people at the office and be like, try this, tell me if it's helpful.
Mm, yeah,
Um,
I like that.
mm,
I like that approach, like leveraging team members, um, yeah, to like vet these different tools to see if it's like improving their lives and all the rest. It sounds like you've got an amazing team over there,
mm.
that you can leverage to do so. Where do you see the industry going and shape shifting? Because there's been so many changes once again, sort of largely because of AI, in recent times, but the industry, even like agency models or the world of graphic design, creative direction, all the rest, just design in general. What changes have you felt that have perhaps impacted you or at least the industry that you're working in? And where do you sort of see, the industry headed? more proliferation, more DIY, like better ecosystems to support design in agency or the BCG type environments? What are you seeing and what are you thinking?
So I have a creative sensei right now, my boss. His name is Mike Lear, and I like his take, which is like weird will win. So
Yeah.
anything that feels normal, anything that feels too safe is right now, anything that has been done will be easily replicated by AI.
Mm,
So we have to be constantly thinking of like, what is that weird space where we can take any of the ideas we do? Um, and I like that, and I agree with it because, yeah, if you have a vision for something that is looking like something new, and then you sit down with that idea and you start churning all the tools that you have to get that result, you will get somewhere new. But if you sit down with no vision and you start creating and you let the machine dictate, I feel like you will end up, at least in the visual space, where most people are probably ending up, and it will get lost in the sea of like content.
absolutely. That's a great take. So, on that front, how do you manage the boundaries of weirdness with then the needs of clients along with your own time? Because in the environment that we're discussing, there's often, to your point, like time crunches. I've got 3 days or 3 hours or 3 weeks to create ABCXYZ. How can you get weird? How do you find yourself and create space for yourself to get as weird as possible in these high pressured environments?
So there was a industrial designer and an advertiser, I think in the 70s, and I don't remember his name right now, but he's super famous. And he had this concept of Maya, Maya, which is most acceptable yet advanced. And it means that people want familiar but a little bit new. So for me, it's always like, how can I get it somewhere new, but it's still familiar, no matter
Mm-hmm.
what I do? So what happened with the rebranding with Jaguar is that they took it too far. It wasn't familiar at all anymore. They just like fired their agency, their creative agency, and I was very excited to see like people innovating to that level, but we're so fearful of new things that we automatically reject it if there's nothing familiar in it. So if you give someone something too weird that they
Mm,
have never seen before, the first reaction will be to reject it. But
mm.
if you include enough familiar things and you mix it up with a little bit of innovation, that will be a good recipe. So for me, that's a way to like always keep myself in control, to remember Maya, to be like, don't go that crazy, Catalina, because the first reaction will be no. um, Take it to a place where people will identify what's happening, but it's still new.
Oh, I like that. I like that. And then what are some tools and tactics that you personally use though to get into that place and space of weirdness? Do you listen to certain music? Do you look at certain imagery just to get your mind and your creative juices activated in a certain way? Like how do you go about accessing that
So
side of yourself?
this weekend, I was playing around with new AI tools, or just like exploring what AI is happening within website creation sites. So Webflow, Framer, WordPress, just to see like
Mm-hmm.
what is happening. And the way that I was playing around with that was doing my own new portfolio. And it's insane because now something that I needed like a team of 10 people, now I can do by myself, locked down like for 4 hours in my house. Um, but what I did find interesting is that through that process, my website now will just be a photograph of the space where I feel my creativity is its best. And it's a dinner table. Basically, sitting down with friends, drinks, of course, having a very good time. That's where I feel ideas flow for me very personally.
I love that. Yeah,
So
we've
it's, hmm,
all got different ways in which we're able to tap in. Like for me, it's when I'm traveling. For
hmm,
some reason, when I'm in a plane, on a plane high in the sky, I just get these floodgates of ideation and wild thinking, creativity. I want to write, I want to create. It's really
hmm.
crazy. So it's interesting how different environments like will activate that within us. I asked just a moment ago, like where you see the industry headed holistically. What are some thoughts, or if there have been internal sort of musings around where the industry is going, and perhaps like there's some things to look forward to, but also possible threats? Not to focus on the negatives, but there's always the polar opposites of anything and everything in any given situation.
The idea that everything can be done faster for me is scary sometimes. Because at least in design, what's happening is that people just hear faster, but they don't understand how fast.
Mm,
So all, or I think they're hearing like now to do an image is easy and fast. So can you have it in an hour? I don't know. That's exaggerating, but it's like it's still taking a lot of time, especially if the bar keeps moving. So
hmm.
it's not only that the AI tools are getting better and people are expecting the same. People are expecting now 1,000 times better, but 1,000 times faster. And honestly, I'm taking sometimes the same amount of time that I used to take to have a mediocre image now to have a really good one. So I am scared of AI instead of being less work, which should be. Because there's obviously no reason for us humans to just like create more work out of nowhere.
Right.
It's becoming more work in at some level.
That's one of the most interesting, perspectives and stances that I've heard in because we recently co-authored the AI Revolution book, which became an internationally bestseller, which is awesome. Um, but everyone's perspective, because I'm currently interviewing a lot of the female writers from the project, from the book, and they've all got a different take. But no one said what you've just said. No one shared what you just shared, which is that um, well, one point I want to make is it sounds as though having really solid human communication
Mm.
and setting these expectations is still incredibly vital. And it's still going to take human beings to have to do that, have to execute on that and navigate that for some time before, because AI can't do it. So, in some respects, in a weird way, it's also a positive what you just shared, because it means that humans are going to have to be in the picture probably for a
Mhm.
lot longer anyway to be able to get all that stuff across. But that's interesting because it's almost like a new form of how to set human expectations amidst this moment in time, this situation, which is really interesting.
But it is exciting. I mean, the day my husband gave me that early access to DALI, I had a list of like 5 years of images I had been wanting to create. And I sat down and one night and I created everything I had been wanting to.
That's unreal. I
'Cause
love that.
there's no limits, right? There's no like, oh, I don't have the budget, I don't have the time, I don't have that material doesn't exist,
Mhm.
or making that in 3D is too complicated. So for me, it's been very exciting. My mind has been blown. Every couple of days I write to my boss and I go like, oh my god, everything's about to change, but I do that every 5 days. So by now it probably doesn't mean anything to him anymore, but I do believe it every time I say it, because it's like, wow, now I can do this, which I wasn't able to do 4 days ago, and I've had this idea for a long time that I can now like create. So that is very exciting.
Yeah, it's so crazy because once upon a time it would be every however many months or years for something to ultimately change. You're like,
Mhm.
wow, there's a change 3 years later. So that part of this world is wildly fascinating and very interesting. Scary, it can feel scary at times, but ultimately
Mhm.
very exciting. What completely enriches your personal heart and soul creatively? So again, removing you now out of the work environment, what sets your heart and soul alight? I've been out with you and I know you appreciate great food, great music, and other cultural experiences, but what sets your creative heart on fire that really motivates and inspires you to be the artist and designer and creator that you are today?
I notice I am very happy when I sleep enough. that is
It's
that
like
is something.
just sleep, actually.
Yeah, that is something that I took for granted before having kids. But if I sleep really well, I can exercise. I can do a lot of the things. And honestly, when I exercise, my mind is so open
Oof,
to
yeah,
like
I'd love to hear
anything.
that.
So honestly, working out, having a good sleep and working out, like it sounds super basic, but for me, they do like wonders.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I've just started 5 a.m. starts. I'm trying to do that 4 mornings a week to get to the gym by 6 a.m. I
Wow.
have never been
Mm,
like, I've never loved exercising early in the morning, let alone at 6 a.m. But I've just wanted to like try and level up and force myself to do it.
mm,
And I've also, yeah, stopped drinking. And it is crazy the difference and clarity, levels of productivity, how much energy, more energy I have. I mean, granted, I do want to go to bed at 8 o'clock most nights these days, but yeah, I agree with you that just even adopting those simple, healthy habits definitely makes a change and difference.
mm.
So, what's on the agenda for you going forward? What are you excited about personally as a creator and designer, like going forward? Is there anything that you're particularly really, yeah, happy and excited about or looking forward to?
I'm an industrial designer, so I'm a product designer at heart. And I feel the more AI tools I play with, the more I am getting passionate about physical objects,
Yes.
real materials, things that don't go away if you turn out your computer, things that shape your everyday behavior.
Yes.
But also, I am torn because I really don't want to create more waste. So I have
Mm.
been playing with the idea that if I could only design one product out of like very, very mindful materials inspired by different things that were targeting to change certain behaviors, what would that be? And I want to give myself the time to be like, maybe I want to do one product in the next 5 years. And I spend the next 5 years thinking about it. And that's something that excites me a lot.
Yeah, I mean, would you go out on your own to create your own specific product slash brand? Have you, yeah, considered going in that direction? Is that something that you would even have the time for with everything that you have juggling now on your plate?
Probably not, but I think slowly I could. Like, I eventually do want to do my PhD. So I think that is something that takes me there. Like, I've been thinking about if I do my PhD, what do I want to do it on? I love the philosophy part of aesthetics and design. I love the human behavior change of it all. I love the projects that IDEO used to do where they would go and to be like, through design, we're going to change behavior of how people perceive vaccines for polio in Africa. Those are
Mm,
like cases where I feel creativity feels useful and like it's doing something for other people. So I want to mix all of those interests and eventually make either a thesis for a PhD or a product, or I don't know, there's a monster and I have a bunch of pieces of clay and I'm kind of like slowly building it without like the pressure of time, which is nice as well.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, I mean, I guess the beauty of design and creativity is you can basically take it anywhere. But
Mm,
combining like more not activism as such, but just some other interests like woven in that are creating change in other areas is amazing. I love that.
mm.
I recently learned that that AI in Japanese means I love you.
Really? I have no
Yeah.
idea. I'm not as fluent as in Japanese as I would love to be, but maybe, yeah.
Yeah, you guys spoke a little bit of it when you were living there, right? But
Mm,
not fluently. Yeah. So if you actually type in AI in
mhm.
Japanese, English meaning or whatever, it means I love you.
Oh wow. I know the basic ashiteru, which is like something that they rarely say, which is I think the equivalent of I love you, but there's probably 20 ways of saying that.
Right, right, right.
And that's
Yeah.
really interesting.
Yeah. So I now might get AI
Mhm.
tattooed on my body
Mm,
somewhere
mm,
because it's a beautiful sentiment and quite sort of futuristic when you think of it that way,
yeah.
starting with AI. Um, Tell us, because we'll sort of wind the conversation up shortly. But what advice do you have for all the aspiring creators out there that want to have a career in design today? What would you advise them to do? Some advice around study or education, but also further education. So let's just say they got their degree 20 years ago, 25 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever. How to level up, stay hungry, curious, and relevant in their career. What sort of knowledge and wisdom would you impart as a result?
I think right now is just to keep learning. Like, if you don't have a passion for learning, fake it. But I think it's so important. And my husband and I, we try to like keep ourselves always studying. That's why
Yeah.
I think like one of our goals was to do our masters, and that's why we moved to Japan to do
Yes.
it together. And now we're thinking if we both want to do our PhDs, where would we like that to happen? When maybe our kids are like 6 or 7. Um, can we do that at the same time as we're working? That would be ideal. So I think studying is like huge right now. I
Mm.
am a bit old school in the studying part. I do like big institutions with like heavy classes and like online learning is amazing, but it takes away contact with like very talented people and experiences people. I like the space. I like the
Mm.
physicality of it.
Mm.
I like the social part of it. Like a lot of my clients after I did my master's in Japan were my fellow students. So it's like you create networks, you create a lot of like human connections within those spaces as well.
Absolutely.
So yes, learning through like digital environments is good, but I would also advise like not ignoring like all the physical institutions and actually going to class and actually like sharing with people.
I love that. And to be challenged in person too.
Mm.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I'm so grateful for, I could keep asking 1,001 questions, but I think you've imparted some beautiful insights and shared a lot today. Did you have any other final thoughts or anything, musings that you wanted to share before we say goodbye today?
Not really. I'm just thanks for inviting me. I'm glad you find some value in whatever I have to say.
Oh my God. I mean, look, I know that so I think I've told you this, but I excelled at art and design in high school. I got graded like 12 out of 10 for some of my projects. It was always a huge art, design, and creativity, has always been a huge part of me, but something that I've always had a mad crush on. So I recognize somebody who has an incredible eye, which you do. You've got a really, really, really great aesthetic. It is heartbreaking when you know someone is a designer, graphic designer, or a creative director, and they've literally got the worst website, or they're on planet Earth, or their work is just terrible. You're like, well, how has this happened? But so yeah, no, it just you've got an amazing eye, and creativity is fundamentally like a massive part of who we are, particularly with this intersection of innovation and futurism with technology.
Mm.
It's just going to be very interesting to see how it continues to grow and evolve. So thank you so much for imparting your words of wisdom and advice today. Where can everybody find you, babe, if they want to reach out and stay in touch?
I guess Instagram, but my handle is kind of nonsense, so I don't know how to share that.
It's not. Your handle's beautiful.
It's like Jaguar Descontrolado, but it's in Spanish, and it's not really Spanish. It's Spanish from the city where I'm from in Colombia because it's like terribly written. We omit certain letters in the Spanish that we speak, so it's Jaguar Descontrolado. I guess that's or I guess my website is catalinalotero.com, and that's one word.
You're like, oh, just Catalina.
Yeah.
So I will include the links in bio. So yeah, make sure that you subscribe, like, comment, and share. Thank you for being a part of the conversation today. We hope that you've taken something away and learn to stay curious and open and hungry to learn and grow like Catalina and her husband and her kids. So thank you again, babe. And for everyone listening, stay unfiltered.
Bye.
Unfiltered.
Like you're in another world, like you zoned out. You know what I'm saying?